Welcome to Speaking of Love, the podcast, and I am your host, Latoya. I created this podcast in honor of my dad, who was an amazing guy. He had an infectious laugh, and his spirit was magnetic. He was the type of guy who made everybody feel like somebody special. If you were to place him in a crowded room of 100 people, my dad would be the smartest person in the entire room. He was an award-winning radio TV broadcast engineer for many years. Born and raised in the city of Detroit, he was one of the first to go to college in his family. And while attending Wayne State University, he developed a lifelong love affair with the game of basketball. He was the shortest point guard on the team, but he could slam dunk the basketball with either hand. By all outward appearances, my dad lived a rewarding life, but there were parts of him that were known to only him. On March 2nd of 2020, my dad's private struggles became public when he took his own life in a murder-suicide. When he died, a part of me died too. And since the tragedy, I have become an advocate for mental health awareness and suicide prevention. I also created this beautiful podcast in honor of my dad and others like him who are struggling with the effects of mental health challenges. My podcast, Speaking of Love, is named after a show my dad once hosted called Speaking of Sports. Thank you for taking the time to be here with me today as we take a journey in pursuit of the strongest magnetic force on the planet Earth, and that's love. My name is Latoya Bond, and I have a podcast called Speaking of Love. My podcast is dedicated to the memory of my dad who took his own life in a murder-suicide. Aside from that, I am a business owner. I have a home-based business. I am also a legal professional during my 9-to-5 day. And I am a person who operates her entire life on the premise of spreading love. It's the secret to my success. It's the secret to my longevity on this earth, and it's what keeps us going because love is the thing that makes all things beautiful. So that's why I'm here today to talk about my favorite subject in the whole wide world, and that's love. Hello, everyone.
How you doing, Latoya?
I am good. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Speaking of Love, the podcast. I have been away, but I am back today for my episode for the month of November. I have an amazing young man here today by the name of Tony Lynch. Tony is here today. Tony has a remarkable journey. He has a remarkable story. And today he's going to be very candid with us and share his story with us. And I'm very excited to have him here. Before we go further, I'm going to introduce you to Tony. Tony Lynch is a grief coach, recovery coach, mental health first aider, and a certified suicide prevention coach. Following the untimely death of his parents and his only son, Tony turned his pain into purpose and began providing grief support services to men all around the globe. As the founder of a nonprofit organization, Memories of Us Ltd., the Global Grief Network, and the Let's Talk About It podcast, I'm here to welcome Tony Lynch. Welcome, Tony.
Hi, Latoya. Thank you for having me on.
I am so happy to have you here. For those of you who don't know, Tony and I co-authored an anthology under the supervision of Dr. Nelson Belkajar. And Nelson invited Tony and I to be authors in the anthology. There were 20 of us in the book. The book is called Relentless Stories, Empowering Stories of Overcoming Adversity. And there were 20 of us. We're all pictured here. Tony and I both have chapters in the book, and today we're going to talk about Tony's chapter and all of the other things that Tony has going on in his life. So, again, talk to me, Tony, about what you've been up to the last couple of weeks. I know you've been very busy. Your podcast, let's talk about it. And you have episodes dropping every single day. So let's talk about your podcast, Tony.
Yeah, I just started. This is my second podcast. I had one called Memories of Us, where I did pre-recordeds and I talked to. We first started off. I wanted to talk to men to put those stories out there about what they went through, after loss and everything, um, and through some unfortunate circumstances. That channel I shut it down and I started Grief Let's Talk About It podcast 9 months ago. And so I found it. I followed the same premise. I was still doing one-on-one interviews, but I wanted to do something that wasn't being done. And so I started doing bi-weekly panel discussions with my colleagues from the Global Grief Network, and we would take topics, unpack them, and it was just phenomenal. The value that we added to our audience, things that we talked about, were things that people normally would think about, but didn't the conversation just never came up. So we was like, hey, you know what? Let's put it out there on the table. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's progressively been growing. It's been a slow process, but it's a process that I've been enjoying. And just recently, the last few weeks, I put up a post on my Facebook platforms, and the response was phenomenal. I ended up getting over 300 guests. And so now I am just scheduling them out. And instead of dropping episodes once a week or anything like that, I said, you know what? I'm just going to do them every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So how are you managing your time doing podcasts every single day? Are you doing one per day or multiple each day?
It depends. It depends. There's days where I am dropping two, but they go throughout the day and things like that. So my time, I'm normally in my office around 9:30, and depending
Mhm.
on what time the podcast is going to be, it gives me enough time to write my programs for my support groups and things like that. It gives me time to go out and network with other organizations and be back. So I guess it's just one of those things. I don't really consider it work or consider it time consuming because I enjoy doing it. I enjoy going out there and watching my network grow and people wanting to come and support and be a part of what we have going on. But also I love being a part of what they have going on as well because of the impact that we have in our communities. I love seeing our communities rebuild themselves and start the healing process. I love it. There's nothing for me. There's nothing else like that feeling of gratification when you can take something that you've gone through and give it to someone else and watch them use it and begin the process and become better versions of themselves. To me,
Mm.
that's a beautiful thing.
So it's almost like your daily podcast interviewing technique is also a form of therapy for you. Would you agree with that?
I would, yes. I learned so much from the people I talk with, right?
Mhm.
Because I never had anyone come to me and say, "Hey, you know what? This is what I did," and things
Yeah.
like that. So I had to go through the process of grieving alone.
Yeah.
Now granted, there was some people that came in. I like to call them my seasonal buddies and things like that. They came in and dropped off little nuggets to me, but for the most part, I had to go through it alone. And
Yeah.
so, having different people on always gives me a different perspective of how to approach someone else. Or maybe I can grab onto what they're saying and use those tools and things for the times where I'm not doing so well.
That's right. Yeah. I always say, because I run my podcast, it was every Saturday morning, 12 o'clock noon. It was like I was getting ready for a therapy session every
Right.
Saturday, getting ready, getting prepared, getting my mind together, interviewing guests, vetting out guests, people who want to be on the show, because a lot of people want to be on the show, but what are you bringing to the show that would be beneficial? So a lot of times when you're vetting these people and you're reading their stories, it's all a form of therapy. It's a form of healing that we use to go forward in our lives. And Tony, I want to talk about your chapter in the book that you and I are a part of, this anthology with 20 other authors. Your chapter here, your chapter number 16. And
Yes.
your chapter, I've read your chapter, Tony. And I have my Kleenex here because what you have gone through is very touching. The name of your chapter is called My Hardest Battle, but My Unseen Blessing. And in
Yes.
this chapter, you talk about how your 7-year-old son passed away from a drug overdose, and it was not of his own will. It was basically a mistake by a pharmacist that
Yes.
caused your son to pass away at the age of 7. And I want to read a little bit of what you wrote here, Tony, because it's very touching. In this chapter, you said, I found myself in a space of uncertainty, loneliness, and darkness. I began isolating myself. I lost everything. I was alone. I felt helpless and hopeless. I became homeless. On top of that, my mother passed away. And of course, this sent me deeper down the rabbit hole of depression. Tony Lynch, how do you overcome something like this?
You don't really overcome it. Um, it's a day-to-day thing that you go through. Some days are good and some days aren't so good, right? But on those days where it's not so good, I hold on to the happy memories that made me laugh and smile and they get me through, right? But I learned to extract in those moments. I learned to extract information from it and begin to teach myself from it, right? Because what I realized that your days are filled with moments, right?
Mm,
Moments throughout the day. So I learned not to carry the bad moments into the next moment, but to sit in the moment where things aren't going so well and go, what are you here to teach me? Because I'm a student. It's my mentor, right? And sometimes your mentor has to approach you in a way to get your attention, to make you understand what it's trying to give you. So I learned this, and I began to take this information from it and leave that moment there, walk into the next moment, because what I found that in the next moment there was someone that came that needed the information that I just extracted.
mm-hmm.
So you don't really have bad days. You have up and downs throughout the day, but they're not really bad days. You don't really have bad moments or good moments. They're just teaching lessons throughout life in that day, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes us who we are.
Mm-hmm. So, how long has it been since Jake passed away?
This year will be 9 years.
It's been
Uh,
9 years.
yeah, he would have been 16th. He would have been 16 this year, December 8th. Well, actually, there was December 18th would be his birthday. Um, so he passed away when he was 8 years old, and it was followed by a major overdose on October 31st, 2015.
Mm,
And so when I go back on it and I look at it, I thought that overdose was the worst thing that I could ever go through, right? But when he pulled himself out of it, because the doctors, they never treated him for his overdose. They treated him for everything else. And then they didn't even want to take responsibility. And we were like, hey, no, you did this. You mixed this medication wrong.
mm,
Very wrong. I mean, how do you get point 0.3 milligrams and jump it from zero point 0.3 milligrams to 1,000 milligrams?
wow.
Right. That's a huge jump, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when the doctor when he pulled himself out, the doctor said he wasn't supposed to make it. that was enough to knock down an elephant. And I was like, whoa. So I was, being relieved in that moment, um, because there was it's scary. It's scary, right? And then
Mhm.
he went on to become a normal, happy kid with no more medication. He was playing with his friends, going to school. He was happy. He was doing well. And 9 months later is is when everything started to change. He got sick June 14th of 2016, and didn't really think too much else of it. Like he's a normal kid. He's out playing with his friends, and the weather's changing because we're going into summer, from summer into fall at the moment. So you got moments where it's cold out, right? Kids get sick.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. That was not the case. 2 days after, he um, he ended up passing away from unknown causes.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
as a father, I was like, how is this possible?
Mhm.
How is this possible? Um, and there was a lot I had to learn from that moment, because as soon as you think that that's the worst thing, because it was the worst thing that can happen, but what else can happen to you, right? What else? What else? Well, two
Mhm.
years, 2 years after that, July 25th, on my grandmother's birthday, my mother passed away from a major stroke. You know,
Wow.
and so I had lost, my mother was my last parent. My father passed away when my son was 3 months old, and my younger brother passed away when my son was 6 months old. So, and three months after each other, and it's just been a continuous thing ever since then. And
So
so,
at what point did you decide that you wanted to turn your pain into a greater purpose?
oh man, you know, um, it was after I almost took my life.
Mm.
It was after my mother passed away, like in a book. I lost everything. I had left Colorado, moved out to South Dakota. I had just started a personal training business, trying to keep myself, trying to stay positive, trying to show people that, hey, you know what? I'm still kicking. I'm still moving. I'm still doing my thing, right? Um, and that did not work out. I was out there for 3 months and lost everything. The girl that I had moved down there with, we ended up breaking up.
Mm.
So I lost everything, all of my weight equipment. I lost my place that I had down here, everything. So I packed my vehicle up with what I had, which was just the clothes. Well, I took my clothes, everything else I got rid of, and I
Mm.
came back to Colorado. And then I was sleeping on people's couches, and that in that moment, like I am still going through the motions, right? But I'm really good at hiding it. So because I never wanted people to worry about me or anything like that, but I was fighting, man. I was fighting with everything I had, and there was times where I was mentally exhausted. I was spiritually exhausted. Like I wish I could explain it, but to be just simply put, I was tired.
Yeah.
I was tired. It felt as if I was in a fight that I didn't even know that it was even existed. I didn't even know who I was fighting, right? And so I came back when I got back here to Colorado. I was bouncing around on a couple of my friends' couches. Here I'm a grown man. They got families and stuff like that. Of course, their significant others like, hey, when is Tony leaving? Right?
Right.
you know and so then the entrepreneur in me came out, and I started doing, started venturing off, and I was having a hard time starting another company, because here I am still fighting my emotions and this, that, and another, and when in that moment, that went on for a few months, bouncing around and things like that. And one day I just said, you know what, no more. I don't want to do it no more.
Yeah.
And I told myself, I said, who's going to care?
Mm.
Who's going to care if I'm gone, right? Now, see, I have a younger sister. It's just me and my younger sister now. She's in the state of Virginia. I'm in Colorado. So I never once talked to her or anything like that. People have a tendency of staying away from you after you experience some losses, right?
Yeah.
Even family members. I don't fault them. They just don't know how to approach it because my sister has four kids, four girls, and so I can only understand from a perspective of, you know what, I don't want to talk about my girls to my brother because I don't know how he's going to take it. Right? I have friends do that too. I don't know how he's going to take it. Right? So eventually, I started I started planning on my suicide. For two and a
Mm.
half months, I noticed patterns with the friends that I had. They would call me on certain days, right? And so once I realized that pattern, I said, you know what? I just need one weekend. I just need one weekend to do this. So what I did, I started off answering the phone for him. Yeah, man, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. And this, that, another. All right, man, I'm gonna give you a call the next couple of days. So the next following week, I stopped answering the phone on those days, and I would call them on the days that I wanted to talk to them. Open
Mm.
it up weekend, right? And they follow suit. All of them did. They all follow suit. So I had everybody talking to me from Monday through Thursday. So I had Friday, Saturday, and Sunday open. And after 2.5 months, I realized that that pattern was solid. No one called me on the weekend. I said,
Wow.
this is the time to do it.
Oh.
This is the time to do it. And so I got off work one day on that Friday. I had my vehicle already packed up. I drove out to Utah, got out there that night, stayed in a hotel. The next day, I went out fishing and took some time to talk to my parents and my brother and my son and just let them know that, like, I'm sorry I failed you.
Mm.
And how much I missed them. But I was just tired of hurting. I don't know and I even told them I don't know what to do anymore. My relationship, because I used to believe that I had a really good relationship with God. And I said, God, I don't know why you did this. I don't know why I was so obedient to you. And I don't know
Mm.
why you would hurt me like this. You
Wow.
know, I understand that I have a past and things like that. And, like I wasn't the best of people at one point in time. I was in the games for over 20 some years, so I had to survive. Right.
Right.
And sometimes survival, some people may not agree with your tactics of surviving, but I did what I had to do, you know. And I have no regrets in my life. I really.
Mhm.
So here I am sitting out there. I'm fishing at the river, on Saturday. Sunday, I went and closed out the hotel that I was staying in, and I drove out to the middle of the desert, the Moab Desert. And I sat there and I was crying. I was just in so much pain and confusion. I was just like I was done. I was so done. That darkness came over top of me, and that voice said, "Do it."
Wow.
So I waited till the sun went down. It's pitch black out. I'm in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And I just remember I opened up the door and I'm sitting there with the door and I pulled out the gun. And I said, just please forgive me.
Oh my God.
Please just forgive me. And I put the gun in my mouth and I was 2 seconds away from pulling the trigger. And someone called my name
Mm.
and I couldn't tell you who it was. But I immediately took the gun and threw it in the front of my vehicle because I'm thinking I'm out here by myself, right? I'm out here by myself. Like, who followed me? And this is
Mm.
if someone did follow me, this is the last image that I want you to have of me. This is why I did this, so I can be alone. And in that moment, when I threw the gun into the front of the vehicle, I jumped up and turned on the lights, and there was nobody out there. There was no one out there. And I sat there for a minute. I put my hand on my head, and the voice said, "Now that I have your attention, I want to show you something." And it began a process of me wanting to blame everything that had happened on in my life on everyone else because I didn't understand that everything that I was going through was meant for me to go through so I can help the next person. So I kept saying, I was like, what about when I was 6 and I was molested? Had you not gone through that, you know what I'm saying, you wouldn't have been able to help this person that went through the same things. You wouldn't be able to give that person words of encouragement, and that, you know what I'm saying, that person can get through it. So, okay. Well, what about the time where I lost everything, and and this and another? Well, had you not lost everything, I couldn't have directed you and put you where you needed to be here. Well, what about the times when I was in the gangs, and you know what I'm saying, and this happened? Well, had you not done that, you wouldn't be able to inspire these young gentlemen over here to not join in, because you know what I'm saying, you pretty much told them that, hey, it's not what you think it is. It's not.
Mm.
So, and then in that course of time, I was homeless. I became homeless 16 times as I was going through this process. And I'm talking to this voice as we're talking right now. And finally I was like, like, why, why did I have to go through this and things like that? And the voice said, oh, you thought it was about you. No, it was never about you. Yes, you had to go through it, but it's about what's inside of you. And in
Wow.
that moment, the voice said, read the book of Tony. And I began to read this thing. And I realized that the grieving process that I was going through, that's what it was. It just looked different. So all this information started pouring out. I came back to Colorado, and I was sitting around and I was like, man, like, what's the next step? What am I supposed to do? And this, that, and another. And the voice said, start a nonprofit, help other men like yourself. I said, oh no, you got the wrong person. There's people better qualified than me, but yeah, but you have something that they don't. And I was like, no. And so for 6 months, I argued with the voice. I did, and then finally, it was such a burden and a pull on my heart that I couldn't deny it anymore. And one day I woke up and I said, you know what, I'm going to do it. And that was when I made the decision to start Memories of Us. And I'm a strong introvert, right? So I've never done anything like this before. What am I supposed to do with this? I don't have anybody to tell me, mentor me in things. So I got involved in a community. I started
Mm.
going to different symposiums, different seminars, and things like that. And I'm networking with people. And this thing came out of me, and people were like, "Oh my God, like, I want to get to know you." I was like, "Oh, okay," still kind of skeptical and things like that. But here I am. I'm meeting people, and things like that. And I took something that was taught to me when I started my personal training business. Like, in order for you to have a successful business, the question you should be asking yourself is, who knows you,
Mm.
right? And do the right people know you? Do the doctors, lawyers, do the dentists, do the car dealerships? Do these people know you? And I was like, no, actually, and then go out there and meet them. So I put feet to the concrete, and I started beating the path like nobody's business, right? And of course, you go through your up and downs because I still don't know what I'm doing, right? I'm just following this path. I don't know where it's leading me. I don't know if it's a setup or anything like that. I'm just following it. Um, but I knew that this is what I was going to do. I knew that I had found my purpose in this world, and regardless of what anybody said, and I had a lot of people tell me, "Hey, man, working with men is going to be hard. You may not be successful at this, Tony, but you're going to be successful." And for the first year and a half, I believed him. I was like, "Man, this is hard, right?" So I started Memories of Us, my first podcast. I said there has to be a way to open up these doors, right? And so I started Memories of Us, and I started showcasing stories of men who have gone through extreme loss. And I wanted to put them out there because I wanted other men to see that, hey, you're not by yourself, and what you're going through, is totally normal. What you're feeling, everything that you're going through is totally normal.
Yeah.
morphed into something different, right? Other people started coming in, women started coming in and going, "Hey, can I be on your show?" And I was like, you know what? Why not? Right?
Yeah.
So I opened up the doors with that. Um, and then that journey lasted for probably about 10 years. I think on that particular podcast, I had 93 episodes. And then, like I said, through some unfortunate events, the guys that I was working with decided that, hey, you know what? We trying to get paid. And, what I'm saying, right now, we're not getting paid with you. I was like, well, I'm still going through the process. I don't really I'm trying to get monetized and all kinds of things. Never happened. So they ended up leaving, and it left me in limbo for a little bit. And that thing came back and said, hey, start another podcast and let's do something different. And that's where Brief Let's Talk About It podcast came out. um, During that course of time, a couple of years ago, I hosted the very first Global Grief Conference, which happened to be a 72-hour live event. And the people that I met through social media, I told them about it. They was like, "Can we be a part of it?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." And we came together, and we put that together in 3 months. Didn't know what I was doing, but it was a beautiful. It was such a beautiful conference, right?
Mhm.
And then from there, the Global Grief Network was formed because after the conference, people was like, "Hey, can we stay in a group? We love the way that we being supported. We love knowing everybody." And I was like, "Man, this is the first time in history where all of these grief practitioners, mental health practitioners, are in one spot." And we became dedicated to reaching into those communities, our Black communities, our Hispanic communities, our poverty stricken communities, and providing resources to them. And so far, I've hosted two of them. We're working on number three. The 2024 has become an annual thing. And since that time, like you said, I've co-authored a book with you. And, thanks to Nelson Beltajar, and all the other amazing authors that contributed to that book. And the opportunities just keep rolling in.
Yeah.
Um, so it's
Well,
been,
you're definitely walking in your gift. You've been
right.
given this gift through incredible circumstances, Tony, and you've taken it and you've given it a greater purpose. And for that, I truly admire people like you who use their lives as an instrument of love to help other people. And that's exactly what you're doing. I want to go back a little bit, though, with the suicide attempt that you had. Tony, if there's someone who's watching this podcast right now who's facing adversities, who's facing the end of their rope, just like you were that day when you drove and you had the gun in your hand and you were ready to just pull the trigger. If there's someone watching right now who's in that very dark place that so many of us have been in, but just don't want to admit it, what advice would you give them, Tony? What would you say to them? And, not in a way where if I can do it, you can do it kind of thing, because people misinterpret that. Tony, how would you help them? What would you say to that person?
First I would tell them that um, they're not alone, right? There are other people that are going through similar things. What you're going through is a very temporary phase, and it's okay um, to feel a certain way about it. I get it. It's easy to give up, but I would encourage you to take that one more step. Reach out to someone that you can talk to. Look, we got a crisis line 988. There are professionals willing and ready to talk to you. Hell, reach out to me. If you can't reach out to me, reach out to someone. But please don't turn a temporary situation into a permanent situation, right?
Mhm.
Because you can't come back from that.
You can't. You can come back from everything except from death.
Yeah, we need you here because look, if you can take the next step and be able to hold on to something like a memory
Mm.
that make you smile, if you can hold on to someone else's faith, until you can develop your own, do it. But please, please, I encourage you, reach out. Please talk to someone. What you're going through is not out of the is not out of the norm. There are people going through similar things, and if you can get through this, you may be able to help the next person. You know.
Yes. I really I love what you're saying, Tony. My father died. He and his wife died on a Monday in a murder suicide. And I often wonder, what would life be like if he had just stayed awake one more day? If
Right.
he had just prolonged it one more day? When you talk to someone who's facing a suicidal crisis, or they're at the end of their rope, they don't want to live anymore, the role of the person consoling them is not to fix the problem.
Mm.
It's just to let them know that they should hold on just one more day. And then that one more day becomes, let's hold on one more day again. And then one more day again. It's not about stopping the pain at that moment. It's not about fixing the problem in that moment. It's just giving them the tools to hold on just one more day.
Yeah.
He
I
had
like
stayed alive one more day. I just wonder, what would Tuesday have been like?
right. I like to add to that because yes, I love the one more day, but if you can hold on one more moment, one
Mm-hmm.
more moment, step into the next moment. Something is going to be totally different from what you're going through. The key to it is don't let it drag over into, don't let that one moment drag into each moment that you have throughout your day. And that's how you get through the day, right? Because you got to learn how to walk. You know what I'm saying? First, you got to learn how to crawl, and that's what those moments are, right? If you can hold on to the next moment, we're willing to walk with you in those darkest moments.
Yes.
And then at the end of the day, when you're feeling okay, tomorrow comes.
Mm-hmm.
One more
Mm-hmm.
day. But get through that first, get through the moments.
Yes. Yes. Stay awake.
Yeah,
Mhm.
stay awake, right?
Stay awake for the rebirth. Every day when you wake up, you're rebirthing a new day. Every moment, every breath you take has value and is precious in this
Yeah,
life. Yeah. Thank
yeah,
you, Tony. I really appreciate you being here today and sharing your words of wisdom. Your story is just incredible. Your journey, how you have survived these incredible circumstances, and you're sitting here today to talk about it. And your heart is in the right place because you want to help others heal and go
yes.
forward. So I appreciate you for being here. Tony, can you tell our audience how they can connect with you? What's your contact information?
Yeah, they can call me 970-599-9917. I'm available. I'm in Mountain Time, so no matter where you're at in the United States, my phone is normally on me. Give me a call, or you can find me on Facebook, Memories of Us Ltd. Especially if you're a man and you're looking for a place to belong, and you haven't found your tribe yet, come join us. If I'm not a great fit for you, I'm partnered with other organizations as well. We will find your tribe with
Your
you.
people.
Yes, yes, exactly. You can find me on Instagram, Men's Grief Support. You can find me on LinkedIn as Tony Lynch. And I would say TikTok, but I'm not very active on TikTok and everything. I'm trying, but I'm not really up there. But yeah, those are the main platforms that you can reach me on. If you don't want to call and you want to email me or something like that, you can email me at ggf1941@gmail.com. And or if you want to check out some of any of my podcast shows or anything like that, you can find me on YouTube. Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. And yeah, we have a lot of great things coming up. We got a lot of great people as well, and
Tony,
Latoya's going to be a part of it. So you guys stay tuned for that as well. And
yes, I think I'm scheduled to be on your podcast on November 26th. So I'm looking forward
yes,
to that.
yes,
Tony
and
Lynch, international best-selling author, Relentless: Overcoming Stories of Adversity. And this book is available on Amazon. So if anyone is interested in purchasing it, the book is by Nelson Beltajar. He is the visionary author, and there are 20 of us anthology authors in the book called Relentless Empowering Stories of Overcoming Adversity. Tony has a beautiful chapter in this book. I have a chapter in this book. There are 20 of us co-authors in this anthology, and this is a beautiful book, and it just, the book resonates with so many people because
Mhm.
we all have suffered grief, we all have suffered loss in some capacity in our lives, and just knowing that you're not alone and you have other people who have survived these circumstances, it's a sense of comfort. So please support us in this. You can purchase our book on Amazon. Before I let you go, Tony, is there anything else you'd like to share with my audience today?
Yeah. Healing takes time.
Mm,
Be patient with yourself, um, and just know how to forgive yourself for the things that you don't know.
wow. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Tony, there's $1 million question here on my podcast. Speaking of love, this podcast was created in honor of my father, who was a radio TV broadcast engineer for many years. And he once hosted a radio show called Speaking of Sports. He
Mhm.
loved that show. It was his lifeline at that point. And so when he died, I wanted to do something to honor my dad. And I wanted to start a podcast or a radio program because that's what he loved. He loved public speaking. He loved being on the radio. He was a news broadcast engineer for so many years. So this was his heartbeat, was public speaking. So when he died, I wanted to create a show after his show, Speaking of Sports. But I don't know anything about sports, but I know about love. So I named the show Speaking of Love. And the $1 million question that I ask all of my guests who sit before me, Tony, how do you define love?
Wow. Very simply put, it's not what you take from people, but what you can give others. Because people remember how you make them feel. And to me, that's the true definition of love. Because you want people, when you become a memory, you want people to remember the smiles and the conversations that you've had. And you don't want them to mourn you in a sad way, but look at you and go, it was an honor to have met you.
Yeah, yeah.
So to me, that is what love is. It's leaving people in a better position than what you found them.
Yes, I love that. When the pages of your life are reviewed, Tony, and your mission here on the planet Earth is complete, what do you most want to be remembered for?
That I fulfilled my contract. I left
Mm,
everything that was given to me, I gave back. When I
wow.
die, I want to be completely empty. I want to inspire the next generation that comes up that sees what I'm doing and inspire them to do better than me. I want to leave a legacy behind um, for those that need it the most. Because without those words and those pages and things like that, who's going to remember that you was here? What sort of impact did you have in everybody's lives? And I want to have the best positive impact that I can possibly give. I want to empty myself completely out.
Wow, that's beautiful. Beautifully stated. Tony Lynch, my co author, my soul brother, I bow to your excellence. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for being a voice for the voiceless. Thank you for not pulling the trigger that day when you wanted to take your own life. Thank you for being here. And thank you for not letting Jake's loss go in vain. You are a tremendous person. And I'm very honored that you and I have worked together on such a beautiful project that will live for years and generations to come. When we're gone, this book will still be around. So
Yes.
thank you so much for being here. I look forward to my interview on your podcast. Uh,
Yes.
26th of November. So we will definitely be keeping in touch. And thank you for embracing my platform with your love. I appreciate you, Tony.
You're
Thank you.
very welcome. The gratitude is mine. Thank you for having me on and letting me share my story with your audience.
Thank you all so much. And this concludes my 130th episode of Speaking of Love, the podcast. I will be back next month for another episode. I hope you all will be okay, be well, take care of yourselves. And if you need love, if you need help, if you need someone to turn to in a time of need, I'm just a phone call away. You all know how to reach out to me. And I hope to see you all real soon. Have a great day, everyone.